G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to my first look at the new action RPG, VRAN. This game comes in from the developers of the Tropico series, and is kind of their first foray into a true action RPG, like a true Diablo-like style action RPG. Pretty action-packed right off the bat here. I'm just gonna watch this beam of massive fire. I played it for about 6 hours so far, which is about the majority of the content in the initial release of Early Access. There's some good potential for this game that gets me pretty interested in it. I thought it could go either way. I thought, you know, this is a game from a company that hasn't really done much like this in the past. They could kind of just get it all wrong for us action RPG fans and really not have anything going for it. Or it could be a sort of title that brings some interesting new things to the genre. And I think it actually falls into the latter category. The early access version at the moment is currently very bare bones. It's basically combat through a number of different maps, 10 levels of character progression, few different weapon types, few different abilities, few different aspects of character customization. No real storyline, no real cutscenes or anything like that in the game yet. So it's relatively short at this point, but there is a lot more that they look to add. And development time for the early access is set to be pretty short as well. It seems like they want to try and get pretty much everything done over the course of a couple months. So if they do manage to do that, that will be pretty exciting for the game. So what I have played so far though, the game is pretty enjoyable, is pretty fun. The combat feels really solid. It's really sticky, you'll notice, when I attack enemies. It'll sort of lock to them, so my character will jump to them and lock onto them a little bit more. So it's not got a lock-on system, it's got like a soft lock system that you don't really control. Just you kind of control it by where you look. But it just works out really well in practice. Now it is a WASD movement action RPG. I'm going to mention that right off the bat because that can be a bit of a killer for a lot of people. A lot of people like their isometric click-em-up action RPGs. There has been a few good action RPGs that have done, you know, using like a gamepad or WASD movement. You know, Diablo 3 did it really well on the console. The controls worked out really well on that game, and it kind of feels like this feels like that. I thought Blizzard did a really good job of porting over Diablo 3 to the console and to that sort of a control setup, and this game has done it really well as well. So it's not a deal breaker for me, but I know for some people it is a bit of a deal breaker to have it be WASD movement. And I have heard, though I've been playing with the controller the entire time, I have heard that the actual WASD movement needs some work. So if you plan to play mouse and keyboard with this style of a control system, you're probably going to be a little bit let down by the controls at this point. But it is something they're aware of and are sort of aiming to fix or improve, hopefully. So hopefully that is something they will do. The actual controller support and controller gameplay, though, is really solid. It plays really well with a gamepad, really solid to play. Controls are really, really tight and responsive, and the combat just feels great. So I think they're approaching early access right here. Essentially what they've done is they said this is the core of our game. This is like what the gameplay is going to be. This is like kind of a taste of that. Now we want to flesh out the story. We want to take it further. We want to make more zones and all that. So that's kind of, it makes sense from the early access point of view. They seem to be doing that pretty well. Okay, so let's talk about some interesting things that kind of set this game apart, because when I first looked at this game, I thought, you know, this game is called VRAN. It's kind of got this like Van Helsing theme going on. Hold on, don't we already have an action RPG that's like a Van Helsing style action RPG? Well, yes, we do. The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing, which is actually a pretty solid game series, and well worth checking out if you're looking for some more action RPG goodness. So I thought, you know, these guys are working from a bit of a deficit in my mind because they're making such a similarly themed game. Like, there's so many things you could choose from when you make an action RPG these days. You could choose to make it like space themed, you could make ancient history, we haven't seen one of those since Titan Quest, or you can go with like the typical fantasy thing, and these guys kind of chose like a very similar sort of setting to the Van Helsing games. Now, it's possible that you know, over a bit of time, and once they start to actually add in story elements, because there's currently no story in the game whatsoever, once they actually add in some of that, it's possible that the game gets a much more unique feeling and setting to it. But at the moment, it's kind of, you know, it's something pretty similar feeling to the Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing. So what does actually set it apart, though? You may have noticed that I've been bouncing off walls. And this is something I actually love about the game. Yes, you can actually jump in this action RPG. Since they went with the WASD or controller-based movement system, it works pretty well to start adding in some mild platforming elements, and I really hope this is something I do more of. But essentially, your character can jump, and you can do wall jumps, and that means doing things like hiding secrets. sort of in sneaky jumping locations, so I need to actually jump off the wall a little bit here. Oh, I'm not very good at this. We can do this. And there we go. So now we found ourselves an extra hidden chest, so we found ourselves some extra loot. So I really hope they do more of this, because I love this sort of like exploration in an action RPG like this. Not something you see enough of. I love in Grim Dawn how there's like some hidden zones where you can like bash down walls and find hidden zones. Well, adding in like a simple jumping and wall jumping mechanic into this game means that you can also, I love that I was able to jump over that wall there, that you can also start to hide some more things. And you can actually use it in combat too. If you get yourself stuck into a corner, there's a bunch of spiders surrounding you, you can jump off the wall to get away from them, to get out of the group of enemies. And it's not something I've been sort of practicing much yet, but I think like skilled players of the game are going to be able to really take advantage of that. You can do things like wall jumps though and slam down, which knocks back and stuns enemies as well. Doesn't do any damage, but you can use it to buy yourself some space and you know, perform some more combat maneuvers. And I really like how they've added this into the game. I think it feels great, and I'm looking forward to seeing them do more things with it. We had a developer stop by the stream when I was streaming the game, and I was encouraging them. I was like, guys, please add more jumping elements to the game. Add more like jumping, almost like jumping puzzles to the game. Alright, so I'm back in the hub now. There's no real explanation of what this hub is when you first join. You kind of just appear here, and that's because there's no like story elements in the game yet. There's a number of different shops here where you can buy potions, you can buy different weapons and stuff in this shop. You can sell things, standard action RPG fare, and then you can buy the card modification system as well. So here is the world map before I go into customer character customization, not customer characterization. I'll show you guys the map here. So this is what's available in the current first release of the early access, and I've done all of the zones that are available so far. And you can see as I mouse over each of these that they have different like they all have, you know, the amount of stars that I've done and the amount of challenges. And if you click on one, like Widow's Mine here, I still have like a number of different challenges to do in this area. Now, this was about 5.5 hours worth of content. So as you start scrolling up, if things continue at the same pace, we're looking at a pretty hefty sized game here based on what's currently on this world map just here. I mean, they could add like very few, or they could add a lot of zones into this, but if it's the same as this, if each screen is about the same amount of content, we're looking at a good like 40-50 hours worth of gameplay, and that's even without knowing any of their like endgame plans, like whether they plan to add like repeated difficulty playthroughs, or some sort of like an endgame you know, generated random map system, or maybe you go back and visit starting zones or something like that in the end game. So we don't really know much about that just yet. So there's the potential for quite a bit of longevity to this game. And I actually do quite like the challenge system as well, the idea that there's quite a bit to do in each zone, and you are rewarded for doing each of those things in the zone. So some of them are like slay certain enemies in certain ways with certain weapons, and those force you to sort of explore different ways of playing your character, which is quite nice. Some of them, you know, kill like a boss with extra difficulty hexes activated, and I like this system as well. Kind of reminds me of Bastion, but essentially you get these different hexes that you get, and there might be more of these later on as the game develops. But you can activate these, and things become more difficult for you, but you gain extra bonuses, and sometimes some of the challenges will be related to this hex system as well. So for example, I can make enemies hit for 50% more damage and cripple me whenever they get a critical strike, and that gives me 10% increased XP gain, as well as if I have 2 of these hexes active, I can get some of the challenges. So currently I have more monsters spawning as champions, and I have monsters move and attack faster, which I found to be a pretty nice way to adjust the difficulty. So there's no like normal, easy, hard difficulty settings, like in the game at least at the moment, but you do get to really modify and customize how difficult the game is and how rewarding the game is based on these hex systems. So if I really want to have to wail on enemies, I can give them a whole heap more armor and life regeneration and make them much tougher. Or if I want to sort of give myself a bit of a timer, give myself a sense of urgency, I can make myself lose health periodically with Hex of Pain. So that's a pretty good system, and I quite like it. So let's go into character customization now, because this is a very important part of an action RPG, and I think that for something to be a true like Diablo-like action RPG, it needs to have a fair amount of diversity in loot that you find and can equip, and a fair amount of character customization. So, the way that this game works, let's start off with the skill weapon system. It works, the best way I've heard this referenced is, it's a lot like Guild Wars 2. The idea is that you can equip 2 different sets of weapons, and the skills are actually tied to the weapon. So right now I have my sword equipped, I gain my basic slashing attack, I can, that has its own sort of properties as well. Every third slash causes enemies to become vulnerable, which the next hit on a vulnerable enemy deals more damage. And then I have other abilities here on my Y ability. I have a powerful single target, and then I have a powerful AoE on my B ability. And the way that you kind of play with the sword is you get kind of this tempo thing going where you do 3 slashes and then follow up with that, you do another 3 slashes, and follow up with the other ability. The sword's kind of like the basic one, but there's some powerful comboing there. And then you can, on the fly as you're playing along, switch weapons whenever you like. So I can just tap one button and switch over to my hammer here and start using my hammer abilities instead. The hammer has 2 single target hits and then a powerful AoE on its 3rd combo strike. And then in addition to that, there is an ability I can charge up for a powerful AoE. And then there is like freaking awesome Leap Slam ability, my favorite ability in the game. So you can actually switch these weapons in your inventory at any time as well. So let's say I want to change kind of like my setup here. I can change to a Rapier and a shotgun instead. So now I have my fast attacking, high single target damage Rapier. And what this does is, it after your final attack in the combo, you gain, your next attack will deal 100% extra damage. So you can do something like get a powerful single target combo like that, then follow up with this dashing ability, or follow up with this attack that bleeds enemies. Now the bleed attack, if you kill an enemy with it, actually refreshes your charge ability as well, so you can be quite mobile and quite high single target damage with the Rapier. And then if I want to go range a little bit, maybe enemies are getting a little bit more dangerous, I can switch to the shotgun. Now the shotgun is interesting because it has kind of like a rhythm game built into it. If you nail the shotgun shots as soon as it comes off of cooldown, you can see at the bottom there, you will actually inflict vulnerability on enemies, and you can actually chain vulnerabilities on enemies. And then you get a snipe ability. If you kill an enemy with a shotgun, the snipe is instantly refreshed. And there is a buckshot ability, which is a powerful AoE as well. So you can change between each of those. Currently in the game there is swords, two-handed hammers, shotguns, and rapiers. Now it would be very easy for them to expand out the weapon types, and I fully expect them to do so. I'd like to see, for example, an alternative two-handed weapon and an alternative ranged weapon, like they could put it like a crossbow in, and maybe a two-handed sword or a scythe or something like that. And in adding extra weapons, they would add extra abilities and extra customization, because you can get any sort of combo of these working you want. So let's say I really like the basic AoE comboing of swords, and then I want something like maybe a shotgun for ranged attacks, and you can switch between those, and you can actually do things like apply vulnerability with your swords attacks, switch over, and then hit them with a shotgun, and sort of take advantage of the cross comboing of weapons as well. So the system is not incredibly complex, but it's well designed, and sort of, in being simple, like each weapon only has 3 abilities, right? A basic ability and 2 added abilities, but the comboing potential of the abilities and the added effects of each of these abilities means that it's got kind of like an elegance to it that does promote a fair bit of customization and a fair bit of thought. I was asked to sort of compare this game on like the complexity scale of something from like Path of Exile to Diablo 3, how complex is it? And in terms of raw complexity, I think this game is actually less complex than something like Diablo 3 in terms of character customization. There's less skills available, there's less ways of modifying those skills. But that's not to say it's a bad thing, because the systems work really well together and they feel really well polished, even at this point in the early access. So let's look at some of the other aspects of character customization. There's very few armor slots in this game. There's only 1 armor slot in this game, so that's kind of like one thing that kind of like sort of, I guess, alludes to the fact that this is not aiming at having a bunch of complex small parts, but rather having a few parts that have more meaningful decisions to them. And the armor, for example, has a big impact on your character. It's like more like a costume system, if anything. You switch between these different costumes, and they have pretty significant impacts on your character. They don't really have like much in the way of like defensive stats or anything like that, but what they do is they change the way the overdrive system works. So this is your added abilities for your character, or your demon powers. So the Wanderer's outfit I've got here, you gain overdrive over time, but no longer generate overdrive from attacks, which is the default way of generating them. There's another one here that you gain health whenever you use a demon power, or this one you gain triple overdrive from critical hits, but no overdrive from other attacks. So you can see if I'm wearing something like this, obviously building critical strikes and generating from critical strikes is going to make me very powerful. It means that your character plays quite differently depending on the costume you're wearing, and it's also kind of like an aesthetic customization thing too. So the demon power system, or the overdrive system, is sort of like your non-weapon based abilities. So you get these, if I go back into the inventory here, there is a bunch of different demon powers that you can equip. You can have 2 equipped at any one time. I currently have a boomerang attack and then a diamond defensive ability, but there's a whole bunch of other ones in here, from meteors to giant beams of fire and, you know, like frenzy auras and stuff like that. So essentially, like depending on the costume you're wearing, you'll generate the overdrive bar, and then you can use those abilities. You'll see I'm losing my overdrive at the moment because I'm out of combo, and the current costume I have on only generates overdrive when I'm actually critting enemies, so it's not going to work so well. Whereas my other set just here, which I can equip to show you guys some of the abilities, generates over time. So it's like you get overdrive slower, but it's more consistent, and you can rely on it being there whenever you first initiate a fight. So you can change your playstyle quite a bit there, and also customize what the actual abilities you get from that. So you can go a little bit more defensive, you can go a bit more offensive, get a bit of utility there. Now the final sort of customization system, there is like potions and flasks and stuff like that, but that's not really that significant in this game. The final customization system is the fate cards, or the destiny cards or something. I think they're called fate cards, but essentially you get to equip a number of these. This increases as you level, and they each take a certain amount of points to equip as well. So you have like a maximum amount of points that you can have. So I've got, there we go, destiny points, 32 out of 35. So you can mix and match different cards to achieve different effects in your character. These give a combination of passive, like offensive and defensive abilities, utility stats, but also extra procs as well, so you can set up sort of like extra automatic abilities in your character. So for example, the moon just here, whenever I crit enemies, every 15 seconds I can cause an explosion that deals 70 frost damage and slows enemies in the area. So I've sort of combine that with a critical strike card here, which is quite simple, but this one obviously a little bit more complex. And then I also, just to give my character a little bit of defense, I have some life steal and extra damage whenever my life is high, which synergizes quite nicely. So this system I quite like. I like this idea of the card system. I think at the moment it's kind of bare bones. I would like to see them add more complex interacting parts on these, and maybe ones that interact with skills as well, so that some of them are just like, you know, increased range damage, so it's like, oh, if I'm using a shotgun I should use that. But I'd like to see some that added extra combo potential to abilities, or added extra effects to abilities that you can play around with. There's a lot of potential with this system that they currently aren't exploring, so I do hope to see them explore that. So overall, guys, at this point, I don't think this game is worth picking up this early into early access unless you're really excited about it and kind of want to like help support development, but it is definitely one to keep an eye on. I think it has a lot of potential, and like I said, some of the systems at the moment are a little bit bare bones, but there's a lot of potential for them to expand it, and if they do sort of look to make some of those things a little bit more in depth and capture some of the ideas they've got and take them a little bit further, I think this game could be really solid. Overall, I was pretty impressed. I enjoyed thoroughly my 5.5 hours with the game. Obviously very short at this point in early access, and I think it's the sort of game, this sort of like buy once standalone game that you're going to enjoy a lot more if you kind of get the more complete experience. I was happy to try it out and see the potential, because I'm obviously very interested in action RPGs, and I wanted to sort of help push development along, and I've given a lot of feedback and reported a lot of bugs and things like that already. But I think for the majority of you guys, I would recommend simply putting it on your Steam wishlist. So this is definitely one to add to your Steam wishlist, guys, and keep an eye on, because as it approaches completion, I'll give you guys some updates to see, you know, exactly how they've gone with increasing things and expanding some of the systems they've got in the current game. So definitely one to keep an eye on, guys. Pretty good fun and some nice systems with some good potential. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this first look at VRAN. That is it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.